welcome to the Katie Sassine Show. As always, addressing the indoctrination of the American nation. I'm your host, Katie Sassine, as always. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at KatieFYNTV and email me at katie@veterannews.com. Now, yesterday, we had updated with current events and we talked about the I-85 bridge collapse, and that's going to need 350 feet of bridge repairs. There's 350 feet of that bridge that is gone. It's going to be about hundreds of millions of dollars in repairs, according to an ABC report that we showed yesterday. And the federal government has donated $10 million to the cause from the Department of Transportation. President Donald Trump did personally call Governor Nathan Deal about the incident, which occurred March 30th, last Thursday. So very unfortunate there, and it will take months for recovery, people, so just hang in there if you're in that long commute. Now, fortunately, I am not. I'm very fortunate to say that I'm not, but I do feel for you, as I will have to sit in that commute at some point to go do fun events and things like that. So then we went on to talk about the upcoming vote this Friday on who will be the new Supreme Court Justice replacing late Antonin Scalia. Well, that nominee is Neil Gorsuch, and he has been highly touted as being the most knowledgeable of the Constitution of, any known judge out there right now. He is currently a judge for the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. He was appointed in 2006 by George W. Bush, and again, will be, if he is voted in, will be replacing the late Scalia, who was appointed by Ronald Reagan. So, as you know, a Supreme Court Justice, the Supreme Court Justice, has a huge influence upon U.S. law, and I would be very honored if we had Neil Gorsuch as our Supreme Court Justice, as he upholds the Constitution and values it and is the most knowledgeable about it to date, touted by many. So I'm sure that would be an honor. And we went on to discuss the Open Society Foundations, which is George Soros's foundations, or foundation. And we also checked out the website, www.opensocietyfoundations.org. And we started talking about Mr. Karl Popper, a professor and philosopher, Austrian-British philosopher and professor. He founded the School of Philosophy, the Department of Philosophy, Logic, and Scientific Method at the London School of Economics, LSE, of which Mr. George Soros attended, because we were talking about Mr. George Soros and the Open Society Foundations, of course. And why are we discussing Popper? Well, he was a huge inspiration for Mr. George Soros, who was granted the opportunity to study in London, similarly to Popper, from being an Austrian citizen to going to study in London and then founding a department there. And Mr. Soros went on to receive his bachelor's and master's in philosophy from LSE, from the London School of Economics. So it's no surprise that he is hugely influenced by Mr. Karl Popper. Now, we went over Mr. Karl Popper is primarily known for his philosophy of science that he called critical rationalism. Basically, anything can be doubted. And that's also known as falsifiability. I always want to say falsibility. Falsifiability, also known as the problem of demarcation. And as I explained last episode, demarcation is boundaries, limits. So basically, the problem of demarcation is saying the problem of social constructs. Now, this falsifiability, what it does is it doubts everything known empirically to date. So empirically, what is empirical knowledge? What is empirical science, classical empiricism? It is based on experience, and experience creates reality. Now, because we don't know the future, we can't say what will be known as reality and what will be known as experience, and thus what will be known as empirical evidence, because we cannot predict the future, which is why Karl Popper believes in falsifiability. I think I'm saying that right. Falsifiability which acknowledges the problem of demarcation and social constructs, because he understands or believes that we can't predict the future, etc., which means that all knowledge is simply knowledge by chance and that it can be doubted. And social constructs are merely just that. They're just figments of the imagination. And one time, this reminds me, someone had told me that nationalism was just a figment of my imagination. And that person is definitely a falsifiability kind of believer. I could, that person was exemplifying the principle or the belief of falsifiability. They were telling me that, my belief in my faith in my country was merely just something that I created in my mind because I was told that it was something real. From the time that I was a baby to a child to an adult, I've been told that nationalism is real, and therefore I believe it is. I believe in it, and I believe that it is real. And so what did someone tell me? Well, that's just a figment of your imagination. Well, that's their opinion. And it could be like the Big Lebowski, that's just like your opinion, man. But I didn't say that. I just said, well, I think it's unfortunate that you feel that way. And that's how I responded to that, because my believing in nationalism is a good feeling. And sometimes we get these instincts when something feels right and when it doesn't feel right. And for some reason, nationalism just feels right to me. So I'm a feeling person. Now, people think it's odd that I be a realist because I'm more intuitive. I like to go with the way things feel. I like to go with, my emotions and my gut feeling and my gut instinct. And for some reason, nationalism just feels right to me. And a lot of conservative principles just feel right to me. I mean, there's some social principles where I am more liberal, but anyway, so moving on. Karl Popper. So Karl Popper believed in the hierarchy of humanitarian values over the free market of classical liberalism. Now, classical liberalism, what is classical liberalism? Well, classical liberalism is, of course, freedom. It emphasizes freedom based on economic freedom, the free market. So there you have capitalism based on classical realism, because it emphasizes the free market and having freedom and participating in the free market, which is what capitalism emphasizes. So instead of believing in classical liberalism, which gives way to capitalism that we have in the United States, Mr. Karl Popper says, no. You're not going to tell me that people's hierarchy is based in their status in the economic market, of which they all have the freedom to participate in. Their status should actually be based on humanitarian values. Well, that is a very insightful belief, but I don't know how that would actually play out in the real world. So the thing about classical liberalism is someone can still be successful in classical liberalism in the capitalist market based on their humanitarian values, so long as the policies within classical liberalism enabling capitalism support humanitarian values. So instead of dismantling classical liberalism and saying that we need an entire new system that's just primarily based on humanitarian values is really kind of crazy. And in my opinion, this is obviously an opinion show. And in my opinion, I think to say that we can have a society that's just totally and completely based on humanitarian values, I think that's, unrealistic. There has to be some kind of organized system, right? So as far as we know it, and there's a lot of things that look great on paper, look perfect on paper, but have actually become disasters in the real world. Marxism, for example, just never worked in the real world, but it looked so perfect on paper. So these are the kind of things we have to take into consideration when we're following philosophers that have such outlandish beliefs. And if you are following Hillary Clinton, who follows George Soros, who follows Karl Popper, then you are following this outlandish type of philosophy. You truly are. I mean, this is not inherent to your nature whatsoever. What Karl Popper believes, Karl Popper already has acknowledged as outlandish. He's already acknowledged that it's the opposite of organic, because he acknowledges that the system that we have in place now is organic. He acknowledges that it is natural. So if you do not feel like this organic way that we have in place right now is the best way based on empirical evidence, or what I consider empirical evidence, because I am not the biggest fan of falsifiability, then yeah. So as you can see, this is all just very heavy stuff, but it all ties down into, it all trickles down from the world government to the federal government to the state government to the local and then to the individual. It really does trickle down. You know, I mean, we even see the DNC interfering with a 6th district election that FYN has covered, that I've been covering with BKP, and they've been helping a candidate gain some notoriety, Mr. John Ossoff. Now, why is the federal government interfering with a local election? Great question. Anyway, we got to take a quick break. I want to thank you for tuning in to my show, The Katie Sassine Show, addressing the indoctrination of the American nation. The Open Society Foundation is a foundation, is a foundation that presses and presses and presses indoctrination. So if you're interested in this kind of topic, definitely stay tuned in, and we'll be right back with you. Thank you.
Circuit World, brand name merchandise at unbelievably low prices. Furniture, appliances, and electronics. Circuit World is locally owned and operated, serving the tri-state area. Circuit World has highly trained professionals to help. Visit your hometown Circuit World today. 3 locations in Georgia, LJ, Blue Ridge, and Blairsville, Franklin, and Murphy, North Carolina. No credit checks, so let Circuit World deliver to you today.
Days Chevrolet in Jasper, we make everything better. And no matter what vehicle you drive, our new state-of-the-art service center can keep you running like new, with factory-trained technicians, genuine parts, and value pricing. Even convenient Saturday service hours and online appointments. So if you want to extend the life of your vehicle, let the Days service experts help. Your better day is just ahead at Days Chevrolet in Jasper, where we service whatever you drive.
Better days ahead, Days Chevrolet.
Find new roads.
El Rey and Ellijay.
El Rey Mexican Restaurant.
Family owned and operated, and a local favorite for families, parties, and meetings.
Great prices.
Friendly service and delicious Mexican cuisine.
Patio dining available.
Come sing in Carlos's Cantina every Friday 9 to 1.
Eat in or take away.
Same location for 14 years. Open 7 days at the corner of Maddox Drive and 515. North Georgia's favorite Mexican cuisine.
El Rey.
El Rey and Ellijay.
Hello, my name is Chad Watkins. I'm the manager at Larry's Body Shop. We are a family-owned and operated business and have been serving the North Georgia area since 1978. We are located at 1216 Progress Road in Ellijay, Georgia. Our shop specializes in collision repair, and we work with all major insurance companies. Larry's Body Shop is ICAR Gold, the highest role of training recognized by the collision repair industry. It is estimated that only 10% of collision shops meet these standards. Our shop consists of state-of-the-art equipment such as laser measurement system, down-drive spray booth, spot and MIG welding equipment. All of our paints are mixed on site so that we can guarantee your paint to match every time. I know that having an accident can be a stressful event. We take pride in making sure our customers are satisfied with the repair of their vehicles. Our waiting area is clean and comfortable with free Wi-Fi and refreshing beverages. So if you're in an accident, stop by and see us at Larry's Body Shop.
Hello, welcome back to the Katie Sassine Show, addressing the indoctrination of the American nation. As always, I'm your host, Katie Sassine. So, we started talking about Karl Popper and classical liberalism, a lot more in depth. Classical liberalism, of course, emphasizes freedom based on economic freedom, the free market. This is capitalism. So, in addition to that, we already kind of looked over that extensively. We, acknowledge that this is what's happening right now. This is what has been flourishing in America is classical liberalism. But Popper isn't exactly a fan of this. Popper believes in the hierarchy of humanitarian values rather than the hierarchy of the free market, which would be, I guess, the hierarchy determined by economic wealth versus hierarchy determined by your values and the hierarchy of your values. So how that is to be determined by an outside force, I don't know. I know that one's wealth can be measured by an outside force. I don't know how one's humanitarian values can be measured by an outside force. Maybe there's a certain level of education. I don't know. That's a whole nother story. So another topic that Popper delves into that is necessary to discuss is tolerance. Popper, now, before we go into what Popper said, tolerance is necessary to democracy and to freedom and equality in a society such as the United States especially, or any society where differences are to occur. Being tolerant means understanding that other people, not understanding, but knowing that other people have different beliefs than you and coexisting with these different people, with these different viewpoints. Now, that's tolerance. If you're a Muslim, and you go to school with a Jewish person, and you go to school with a Christian person, etc., it's all good because you're tolerant of their different beliefs. Does that mean you're understanding? No. But does that mean you do not say anything insulting to those religions because they have different beliefs than you? Absolutely. You're tolerant. You tolerate them. So it doesn't necessarily sound like a positive term, but nonetheless, that's what we call it in politics right now. That is what we call it. So Popper recognized that extreme tolerance would actually be counterproductive. Having extreme tolerance would make way for intolerance. Because if you have an extremely tolerant group, that would give way to intolerance. Because this is the punchline, because a group that is tolerant of anything allows for someone to be intolerant of them. So if we've got a group of people, say a whole country, say the United States for instance, and we're tolerant of anything and everything. So let's say we're tolerant of a religion. Let's say we're tolerant of Confucianism in the United States, Chinese Confucianism, and which is their way, their principal belief as far as ideology goes. So the U.S. is very tolerant of Confucianism, so much so that they allow Confucius people to start burning all other religious peoples alive. Now, that is extreme tolerance because obviously we shouldn't be so tolerant of another group that we're allowing them to commit atrocities of violations of human rights, right? But that's what Popper means by extreme tolerance. He means that if you're so tolerant that you're going to allow another group to completely and utterly take advantage of you, then you're being counterproductive with your tolerance. You're actually breeding intolerance. And so have we seen examples of this in the United States recently? When I think about tolerance and intolerance giving way to intolerance, what I keep thinking of is the Mayo Yiannopoulos speech at Berkeley. And if you weren't with us about a month ago when we discussed that on the show, I think it was 2 months ago now when we discussed that on the show, Milo Yiannopoulos, he is an editor for Breitbart. He is known for very controversial statements. He's a libertarian. He is also a gay white male, British. He was supposed to go speak at Berkeley, and the students rallied him out. Now, apparently, these students are tolerant individuals, and they didn't want Milo Yiannopoulos to speak at their event because they were tolerant individuals, and they believe that Milo Yiannopoulos is an intolerant individual. So in order to keep an intolerant individual from speaking, what did they do? They prevented him from speaking by physically destructing the property. And of course, we had the university tried to pin it on the anonymous group, and it was uncovered that there were even teachers rioting and doing violent acts, or professors, I should say. So that's all out the window now. Now we know that it was actually people that prided themselves on tolerance that were making way and allowing for intolerance. Now that differs from the Confucianism example that I gave earlier, obviously, but this is nonetheless the same exact type of example. It is extreme tolerance giving way for intolerance. These people think they're so tolerant that they're actually breeding intolerance because they believe that their intolerance is so high and mighty that they're above anyone else's tolerance. So it's just, I mean, for lack of better words, I could have, written that down in a more eloquent way, put it down in one sentence with a pretty bow tie, but I think you get what I'm saying, is that tolerance can become an epidemic and breeding intolerance. And this is what we do not want in the United States. So moving on, this foundation that we've started talking about, George Soros' foundation, the reason why his lovely face is right behind me and Karl Poppers is right here, is because, well, we're talking about what is an open society, but anyway, we're talking about that because of George Soros and Karl Popper. I'm, a little hazy today, not feeling so well. Sorry about that. So what is an open society? Phrase was coined in the 1930s by French philosopher Henry Bergson. Then Karl Popper, Austrian-British philosopher and professor, went on to develop the meaning of open society in the 40s. Now, what is an open society? An open society is a society that, where individuals expand freely and they believe in what they want without limitations of social constructs. So that's an open society. But according to George Soros, what is an open society? George Soros said that he doesn't have a definition. He said, I don't have a definition of what an open society is. He went on to say an open society has to define itself, which is strange because Karl Popper gave a definition for open society. And an open society is reportedly, according to Soros, an open society is threatened by totalitarian regimes. Therefore, it counters totalitarian regimes. It is on the opposite side of the spectrum as totalitarian regimes and excessive reliance on market values. Soros said there has to be something else to hold a society together aside from market values. So I think he is inciting that what must hold a society together is values, humanitarian values. Open society, George Soros said, is neither market fundamentalism, neither communism, neither socialism. It is the ... recognition that all of our concepts are flawed. So I guess that this open society must be based on critical rationalism, which denies classical empiricism that bases reality off of knowledge and experience. Because Soros says that open society is the recognition that all of our concepts are flawed. And our concepts, he's referring to our concepts that are our social constructs. Those are our concepts. That's our conceptual knowledge of the world. how do we conceptualize the world? How do we perceive it? How is it conceived to us? Well, through social constructs, associations, etc. All these things that we learned about in psychology, that we talked about in psychology. And he says that they're all flawed. And they all just so happen to exist because that's just the way that things happened. That's just the way that the present unfolded. And because the present unfolded that way, we made the past our history and we made history fact. But history just so happened to occur by chance. And that's where he doubts it. So, now what is an open society according to Karl Popper is another story, because George Soros didn't really give a great, doesn't really give a great definition. And he admittedly said that he doesn't have a definition for what open society is. He said it has to define itself. When his inspiration, Karl Popper, and that was said in an interview in 1998 on one of his books, which we'll go over later. While his inspiration, Karl Popper, admittedly, gives the definition of an open society. So an open society, according to Karl Popper, sources inspiration, the implied contrast of the open society when the term was created by Karl Popper was, of course, between the totalitarian regime of the Soviet Union and which was a closed society, and the Western democracies as open societies. So we've got to take a break for today. When we come back for tomorrow, we will get into the discussion of an open society. According to Karl Popper, George Soros' inspiration for his book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism, Open Society Endangered, the inspiration for his book, and of course, leading to his Open Society's foundations, which we are covering this week on the Katie Sassine Show. And why are we covering the Open Society foundations? Because this foundation is pressing indoctrination. It's pushing indoctrination everywhere. And along with MoveOn.org, sponsored by George Soros. So anyway, we've got to take a break for today. Now we'll be back here, same time, same place tomorrow. So stay tuned in with the Katie Sassine Show. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can tweet me at KatieFYNTV and email me at katie@veterannews.com.